Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to CappCon2016, the second CappCon we have. My name is Alexander Ljungberg. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to CappCon2016 today. I hope you're all as excited as I am about all the amazing things we're going to see today. I think it'll be fantastic. We have a busy schedule. If there's one thing I would like you all to take away from this conference, is that Cappuccino can do some amazing things. For a while now, people have been making all these amazing, fantastic, outstanding apps, and for the most part, we don't actually see them. We don't get to see them. That's going to change today. But it's not enough to just show you guys that this is a great framework, because just by virtue of you guys being here, clearly you already think it's a great framework. You wouldn't have traveled to Leeds to see this conference if you didn't. So the other thing we would like to achieve during CappCon here is to get the word out, because this is a great framework and people should know that. So what I would like to do is to invite all of you to go on Twitter, app.net, Instagram, whatever it is you kids use nowadays, whatever is your favorite social poison, and just give us a shout out. Use our hashtag CappCon2016. Put this conference on the map, please. And there's that hashtag for you. Also, of course, we also have our Twitter account at Cappuccino, so you can always write to us there. And one thing we are going to do during this conference is that we will be taking questions. So if you're too shy or too busy to come up and ask us in person, you send us a tweet, and we'll see if we can cover whatever you asked, whatever feedback you provided during the panel, which we're going to have later today. Let's talk a little bit about today. There we go. You all know the agenda, but I will go over it real fast. We're going to have Antoine McDowell, second presenter today. He will be showing us a little bit of what I was mentioning there, that we are going to be demonstrating that there are great apps out there, that you can do amazing things with Cappuccino. And Antoine will be the first one to do that by showing us a little bit of what he's been working on over at Nuage Networks. Nuage Networks, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce that. And that will be at 10:15. And this is actually an amazing app. You guys are going to love it. Martin Kohlberg will follow that. And Martin Kohlberg works with a company called Oops. And they have been working for a long time now with Cappuccino. And they have a fairly scalable app that serves quite a few customers. It's in production right now. And as you guys have seen on GitHub and so on, those guys have been rocking it, just optimizing Cappuccino, making sure it's up to snuff for their big production use. After the lunch break, we're going to go on to Tim Howell from RW Elephant, who's going to wrap up that little tour de force of cool Cappuccino apps and let us know what they've been doing over at RW Elephant with Cappuccino. Then we're going to move into some more technical topics. We're going to see Alexander cover the QCAP testing application, which allows you to visually test your Cappuccino applications. And he will also go into a little bit of OG test, tell you a little bit about when should you use one, when should you use the other, what's the advantage, what's the disadvantage. Continuing on the sort of technical track, we're going to have Chris Serafin come up, and he's going to talk a little about how to scale a Cappuccino app, because it turns out that these guys are scaling a Cappuccino app. They got a seriously large Cappuccino app with, I think I heard yesterday, something like 150 zip files, something like that. tons and tons of code. So, as it happens, he has some experience in that business, and he'll be up here sharing that with all of us. At 5 p.m., we're going to have the panel I mentioned before. So hopefully by that time, you have all posted your questions on Twitter and let us know what you actually want us to talk about. What we are looking to talk about, if nothing else comes up, is a little bit about, again, the outreach part of this project. How do we get people to learn about Cappuccino? How do we get people over the sort of hump, the fear of learning something new, especially when you see a language that has, little curly brackets and square brackets and stuff like that, and you're not quite sure what they do. So that's one thing we'll cover in the panel, but we'll cover anything at all that you like. And at that time, we'll also try to, if at all possible, bring in Aparajita over video conference, so he'll be able to participate a little bit as well. At 6 o'clock, we'll be done, and I'll close up with just a couple of thoughts, maybe a summary of the panel, to see exactly where we're going to go from there on. Don't worry, there will be breaks. Refreshments are provided, and indeed, this whole event is provided by our sponsors. So I would just like to give a big thank you to the University of Liege, and personally, of course, to Didier for setting all of this up. Very nice. Thank you very much. And to our other sponsors, which are RW Elephant, Oops, and Noaja Networks. So, who am I? Well, some of you probably don't know me. I've been hacking on Cappuccino since 2009. I was contacted by the 280 North guys back in the day to be a core developer. Since then, I've made over 1,000 commits to this project. I don't know if they were any good, but they were many. So, as you can see, I've kind of invested myself into this. In fact, it turns out that back in the day when they just came out with it with 280 slides and so on, I guess I was an early guy who read about it, and I got in there and I said, you know what, this is great, and I love it, and I think we should be able to do something with bindings here, and we should be able to use more modern technologies on the web. And that's how I started putting in some of those 1,000 commits, because there turned out to be a few bugs with bindings at that time, and there's still a couple we're ironing out. But before we get into all this good stuff about what makes Cappuccino great, I would like to talk about something else. I would like to talk a little bit about why we are here today at all. I think the web is a great place. The web revolution has enabled, for the first time, real cross-platform applications. I'm not talking about, the dinky little Java application that looked like one thing on one platform and something horrible on the other platform. I'm talking about real cross-platform applications that kind of act, work, and function the same way on different platforms. Not just operating systems, but in fact, it works the same on different devices. You could run the same website on your phone. You could run it on your computer. In that sense, the web revolution has been great. But it's also a bit of a backwards place. We lost something along the way as we went onto the web. What we lost was 20 years. We lost about 20 years of user interface and user experience development. 20 years of iterations to make good user interfaces that are human-friendly. Everyone today is reinventing the wheel. You can get your data bindings if you go and you get Angular.js or one of those guys. You can get your kind of formatted tables. If you get Bootstrap and then you add a couple of jQuery plugins, then now you can suddenly sort your table. And maybe if you're really lucky, you can resize a column. If you write a dramatic amount of HTML and JavaScript to glue it all together, you might even get drag and drop. And those are just the wheels we are reinventing today. Those are the things that people are going back now and saying, you know what, I want drag and drop in my table, I'm going to reinvent that. I'm going to do it from scratch. I'm going to write in jQuery. But there are things that people aren't even bothering to reinvent. Think about first responder logic. Think about, and I'm going to get back to that for those of you who don't know what that is, but think about first responders. Think about keyboard interaction, pervasive keyboard interaction, being able to, click on a table and navigate in it using your keyboard. Think about pervasive undo and redo. And I'm not talking about the little undo pop-up in Gmail that fades away after 5 seconds. Think about drag and drop between disparate UI elements. Taking a picture from your set of pictures, dragging it into a document, dragging it into a table. It's not just a list of buzzwords. These are technologies that make a difference. They weren't created because they look cool or they were fun. They were actually created because they make the user interface better. When you see something and you can touch it and you can move it, which is what drag and drop is all about, it makes sense. It's intuitive. When you click on something, even if you don't know what first responder logic is, and then it starts to respond to your keyboard, it just makes sense. You clicked on that thing and now you're controlling that thing. It's not that complicated. That's why it's more than just buzzwords. It's actually usability. It's about making a nicer experience. Take some of the best web applications today. Look at companies like Google. This is a billion-dollar company. It can spend a lot of money creating user interface if it likes to, and it does like to. Google tries. They really try. They spend a lot of money on their user interfaces. They can probably make a nice sortable table if they really put their backs into it. But there is a thing. If you take Gmail and you look at it in isolation, you just pop up a window, you go into Gmail, and you navigate around, you're going to think, hey, this is a pretty good app for being, what it is. You can really do the things that you expect to. You can actually drag and drop an email. It's a nice app, right? But take that app, and let's say that you took that whole web view and you just put it inside of an app container and ran it on your desktop instead. And now you put it next to any run-of-the-mill desktop app, and suddenly your perspective changes. Now, Gmail doesn't look so hot anymore. Your perspective is different. You start to realize that the standards, the ambitions of Gmail, as high as they are for the web, are not high at all compared to what we are used to on the desktop. What we developed in 20 years on the desktop. I mentioned drag and drop. Let's take a look at that in Gmail. What happens if you try to drag and drop an email? Well, it actually works. You can drag and drop an email. You can put it inside of a folder. But it will do some crazy thing where it selects all the text on the page at the same time. It looks really wonky. It's buggy. Even if you do manage to drag and drop it, do you really think that you're going to be able to undo it with Command Z like you would on the desktop? No, you won't. There is an undo button, but it only lasts for 5 seconds, like all the undo buttons in Gmail. It disappears. What about if you want to make a multiple selection in that email table? You select a couple of emails. Maybe you want to do it using the keyboard. You can see where this is going. There are all these little interactions that come together, and you can start to see through the cracks. Even this billion-dollar company, they spent a lot of time on this product. There are little holes here and there. And here's the thing. When you look at that desktop app, the random desktop app that you place next to it to compare to Gmail, and you start to play with it, you realize this is not even specific to some kind of super awesome mega desktop app. No, it's a desktop app you could have written in 10 days because it's part of the framework. You can see where I'm going with this. What is it these apps have, the desktop apps, that these big brand name billion-dollar web apps don't have? You might say, well, it's not a fair comparison. The desktop has a head start. It's been there for a long time. The desktop is a desktop. It's true. It does have a head start. But Gmail, I don't mean to hack on Gmail in particular. This is actually just an example I'm picking because it's something all of us know. But this actually goes for most of them. If you look at some of the modern web apps today, you'll see some of the things I'm describing here. Gmail is turning 12 tomorrow. 12 years. Next, which of course is the basis for Cappuccino, among other things, is, I think, 19 years old, something like that, at most, 1996. So how is it that this company has spent a decade on this product, and they can't match some of the features of a 10 days old Xcode product that you could have whipped up in your basement? I could tell you that it's a case of not invented here. That what went wrong is that Google decided that they are going to reinvent the wheel because they like to do that. Google has often been accused of just recreating things willy-nilly because they think they're the best at recreating stuff, right? They want to do something new. And all new developers face that same urge when we are just getting started. We want to make something new, It takes a lot of mental effort to get used to what's out there already. So it could be that. It could be that Google just, we didn't invent some of these UI technologies, so we're going to reinvent them from scratch. But I think there's actually a simpler explanation. I don't think that's necessarily what's going on at all. I think what is going on is that it's a wheel thing. Reinventing the wheel. You want to lay proper foundations before you build a house. That's not easy, especially not on the web. I don't think that Google looked at it and said, you know what, we're going to build this house and we're not going to lay a foundation because we're lazy. I think they looked at it and they said, you know what, we can't lay a great foundation because JavaScript is very limited. It's hard, it's very difficult to create a great foundation. And you know what, to be fair, they were right. 12 years ago, you could not have created a proper foundation for a web app like Gmail. They had to start from scratch because there was nothing else out there. They were among the first to actually make an app on the web, not just a connection of web pages. I mean, some of you probably remember how it was back in the day with JavaScript. Anyone remember prototype.js? The fact that you couldn't even make classes without, downloading a third-party library. There were little things like drawing a line on the screen. That was difficult, especially if you need to draw the same line in Internet Explorer 6 as well. There were other things on that list of hard things, making it run fast. JavaScript was a dog back then. Scaling, rotation of graphics, again, that coherent object model in the foundation. So naturally, they lowered their ambitions. They had to deliver a product. It's understandable. It's perfectly understandable. And they delivered that product. From then on, they slowly grew their ambitions. Yeah, we got drag and drop upload after a while. We got that 5-second undo. That wasn't there to begin with. But they never came around full circle to come back and look at the foundations. They never replaced those foundations. And that's why we're seeing cracks in it. That's why, again, when I go into Gmail and select an email and drag and drop it, there's some kind of explosion of textual selection that happens at the same time. It's very, very funny. Foundations were hard. Foundations were too hard to lay. So that was skipped. Yet, here we are. We saw things a different way. Cappuccino is that ambitious framework, that shot at filling in the foundations. The one that says, you know what? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to port it to the web, the wheel 2.0. Cappuccino is the framework that raises the bar, the one that will bring decades of UI experience with us into a brand new web world. The one that lays a foundation and then lays a foundation for the foundation. You don't have to look very far to see that this is actually valid, and it happened. The showcase app of Cappuccino was 280 slides. When it was released, it caused shockwaves. No one had seen something as ambitious as that on the web before. It was keynote for the web, way back before anyone had even tried to do something that ambitious. You had little previews of your slides. You could click on text, you could rotate it, you had drag handles. All of these things that we are completely used to on the desktop, but which just, the ambitions had been too low for on the web before. And since then, since 280 slides, we have continued to raise that bar. We have probably delivered as many new and innovative features, which are actually old and not innovative features, twice over again in that time span. Let's talk about some of those little UI quirks I mentioned in Gmail again. Do we have first responder support? And now I'll go into a little bit of detail what first responder is. First responder is just basically the notion that something is the thing that you are focused on right now on your screen. And it's not necessarily a text field. It could be a table. It could be a collection view. It could be just a pile of images. When you click on it, it gets a kind of focus. But normally on the web, you have no such notion. The only things that can get focused there are text fields, and sometimes buttons if you have that enabled in your operating system. But we have first responders in Cappuccino. That means that if you have two tables, you put two tables next to each other, you click on the left one, keyboard navigation is going to hit that table. You're not going to start navigating the wrong table, which is exactly what will happen in many apps. If many of these web apps support keyboard interaction at all, if they even allow you to do keyboard interaction, if you start clicking on that source view and then you hit the down key to select the next row in the table, most likely it will select the next row in the main table because it doesn't know that you just selected something else. That's not a thing. That's just not something that they do on the web. It's a foundation. That's a foundation in Cappuccino. And you can really start to see now how this comes together, because if you think about, okay, so the guys over at Gmail, are they silly for not having done this? Not necessarily. It's actually a very small feature. It's not, I like it, but it's not going to bring in loads of cash. No one is going to say, oh, I'm going to buy this product because I can click on the source view and I can navigate. The only way you can do something like this and actually get it right and get that high standard is by putting it into the foundation itself, by putting it into something that's shared by many. So that the little work we do here is actually used not in one app or two apps, but in hundreds of apps. And that's when it becomes feasible. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying this is something that has to be done at the foundation level. What about drag and drop? Well, we got that. If you make a multiple selection, you can do that using the keyboard. You could do that in a collection view. You could select a couple of images from something that doesn't look at all like something where you normally can select things, but just because we say it's a collection view, it has images, I can select things in it, I should be able to drag and drop them. You can do that with a minimal amount of glue code. Undo and redo stack is a real thing. It's not just a 5-second pop-up that's going to allow you to undo the last action. You can undo, you can redo, you can drag and drop that whole bunch of items, and you can get all of them back to where you started, even if it's something you only thought of a couple of moves down the road. These are not really the features of Cappuccino. They are features of Cappuccino. They are benefits of Cappuccino. If you use Cappuccino, you get all of this. You get drag and drop. You get, keyboard navigation that actually works sensibly. You get nice tables with resizable columns. But to say that's Cappuccino is to really focus on the big brand features. What's really Cappuccino is the fact, again, it's a foundation. If you go into it and you look at the very bottom of it, there's Objective-J, the foundation for everything else. That's where we got our classes. That's where we got our categories. And then we built foundation on top of that, which allows us to get powerful sets and arrays long before they were part of JavaScript. They're only just now coming out with sets for JavaScript. The big features that we're looking at emerge from the fact that we built a foundation on a foundation, and then we built the app on top of that. We are not reinventing the wheel. We're doing quite the opposite. We are putting these wheels in at the base, and then we're reusing them at each layer. That's what gives us power like, let's look at the token field. In fact, I might have one. Look at our token field, which is one of our many things. If you look at the token field, it has a lot of behaviors, tons of behaviors. You can go in here, you can type in a new little token inside of there. You can see how these tokens kind of word wrap. There's a scrollable area inside of this token field here. This would be nuts if you try to do it in jQuery, because you would have to implement all these little behaviors. But in Cappuccino, we don't really, because we already have a lot of these concepts. We have the CP scroll view. We have the CP text field. We subclass it. We have scrolling. We have buttons. We have all these ground level foundations that allow us to build more advanced features at each level. And that's really where, in the end, your app comes in, and it becomes great, because it gets all these foundations. No one in the same state of mind would do any of this stuff by hand or for a single app. But us, as a group, when we're working on multiple apps, it starts to make sense. We can do a great token field because we have a great text field, because we have a great scroll view, because we have a great CP array. Writing for the web is hard. Just like for any UI, it's about consistency. It's about the details. It's about what feels natural, what should just work for the user when they look at a page. What should just work? Some very big and very modern projects that are available today have proven that just throwing money at it is not enough. You have to start with the right ingredients, the right foundation. Cappuccino is that foundation. We have built an outstanding framework that brings the desktop to the web. And today, we're going to show you that it really works. And on that note, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Cappuccino 0.9.9. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a whirlwind tour of what's new in 0.9.9, and we're going to come back to some of these subjects in more detail later on today. And I'm going to start with CappEnv. CappEnv is a foundation level tool. It is virtual environments for Cappuccino, just like in Python. It allows you to have multiple installs of Cappuccino going at the same time. Those installs might have different libraries inside of them. They might even have a different version of Cappuccino itself. You might be, having one with master. You might have one with 0.9.8. Works like this. You go ahead and you create your. I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it Cappuccino in my home dir. You run this command, CappEnv, specify the path you want to use, and it's going to download all of Cappuccino and put it in there. Now it's going to download an old version, so it's going to be up to you to actually update it to whatever you need it to be. And I'm going to do that. Actually, I didn't put that on the slide, but you can just go ahead and you can make install any version of Cappuccino you like. You put it into that environment. And now, once you've done that, what happens is, if you look at this little side here, once you create an application, anything you do using Cappuccino is going to use that special environment. It's just going to pull from whatever environment you have active right now. So right now, in this particular example, I've got 0.9.9 active. I could have had 0.9.8 active instead, and I would have gotten different symlinks inside of that little app I just created. One thing to note here is that Xcode Cap is not a part of your virtual environment, so do keep that in mind. You're going to want to keep the latest Xcode Cap version installed at all times. It's not part of your environment. Speaking of Xcode Cap, we are today introducing Xcode Cap 4. Some of you probably used it already. That is not Xcode Cap 4. This is Xcode Cap 4. It is our new version of Xcode Cap. It has a brand new user interface. It has a focus on managing multiple projects. It's got some really nice notifications. It's been cleaned up in general. It's a very, very powerful tool. And it's right behind me right now. You can see there's a beautiful user interface. And there's a big project sidebar there. So what you can do now is with Xcode Cap 4, you can do exactly the same ways, same things you always could. You can, this is the application I created for, empty app, classic Cappuccino. Very difficult to see on this screen, I'm afraid, but you have your traditional window in here with a little slider. And just as before, you can go ahead, you can edit it, put in maybe a little bit of text there, hello Capcom, and Xcode Cap will compile it for you. It will generate all the necessary files, and when you open it up in the browser in Cappuccino, boom, there is your new text, hello Capcom. Just like before, you can add an outlet. The app is going to automatically pick up on that. You can go ahead and connect the text field just like before. Once you've added your outlet, and this might be a primer for some of you, you can start talking to it. So inside of your code, now I've connected up this text field here, and I can tell it not to be editable. And again, Xcode Cap will just magically transform that. Oops, wait, something happened here. What is that? Well, that is a notification about lint in our code, which Xcode Cap 4 has helpfully provided for us. And basically, it noticed that, hey, I left a couple of extra spaces in there. And there it is in the user interface. We have some extra white space inside of that code there. Removing that, decompose as usual, and there's our disabled text field, which of course looks exactly like a non-disabled text field in this particular screen. That is Xcode Cap 4. The other thing we're introducing in Cappuccino 0.9.9 is Retina support. We have enabled Retina drawing on our canvases, and it's enabled by default. And for those of you who don't know, Retina is basically high DPI when you have a modern Mac or an iPad or a modern PC laptop that has just about double the resolution of a normal old style screen. When you do have that, we will now use it. And that looks like this, and this is going to be really difficult to show. But this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Wow! Much sharper, I promise. So as long as you don't run your Cappuccino app on a projector, you're going to like this. The other thing we've done is we are introducing localization. And the cool thing here is that, again, we're going to stand on the shoulders of giants. We're going to do it the Cocoa way, just like we do everything. So you can now localize your apps using regular string files. This means that, in fact, you can take your Cappuccino app, you can localize it, create the different languages that you want to use, and you can take that strings file and you can send it to any old localization service, just like you would for your Mac app, just like you would for your iOS app, and they'll translate those strings for you. You'll get them back, you pop them into the app, and the app will automatically pick up on it. As soon as the user changes localization in their app, if their default localization is French instead, you can get the app in French. Localization looks like this. Also, something that's a little bit textual, so I'm sorry for not having more graphics here, but basically a strings file is just like this. It's a collection of named strings that you can copy and then you just go ahead and translate for each language. So in this particular case, I can translate its greeting to "Hello CappCon" in Swedish. You do need to add a little bit of extra stuff to your info.p list, which is a slight departure from Cocoa, but we do need to know what the names of your localization files actually are, because we can't just list them like you could in Cocoa. So you go ahead and you add a little bit of text to your info.p list, and that's it. Now you have CP localized string. You can go in, you can pull up your strings, and you will get the appropriate translation for whatever your current context is, whatever your current locale is. Sorry. I don't actually have a screenshot of what that looks like because it doesn't look like anything, it's just text, right? So if you did load this app now in a Swedish browser, it would now say "Hello CappCon" in Swedish. This also works for zip files. So just like, again, in Cocoa, you will be able to take your normal process that you use for a Mac app to translate it, localize it. You'll be able to extract all of those strings from your zip file and, again, ship them off to that translation service and get them back for whatever languages you need. The other thing we're doing is tracking areas. Tracking area is a new feature that was introduced in Apple's OS X 10.5. It makes it a little bit more logical and simple to track your mouse, and it's actually a little bit better for performance as well. To use tracking areas, this example is completely bogus, but basically what you want to do is you add a tracking area to any view, you tell it who's in charge of that tracking area, you say what you want to track. Do you want this area to be active when the view is in the key window, when the view is, do you want it to be active all the time, like in my example here? And it will start to track the mouse for you. Then you will get your normal mouse events here, and you can react to those. So in this particular case, I've added this guy here. It's going to make the back of my text field red. And if I just now move the mouse up into the corner here, That's what I get. This is just a selection of the new features in Cappuccino 0.9.9. One thing that I cannot show you guys, but would love to if I could have, is optimization. We have some significant performance improvements in this new version, which should give us speed improvements of up to 20%. Many thanks to Martin here, who's been working very hard on this. We have continued to evolve QCAP, and we're going to have a presentation on just that later today. Adding more features, making it more abstract and reusable. We have optimized the table view, which I know is something that all of you are always looking for. We have added CPU user notification, which allows you to interact with the notification APIs of your browser, which basically means that you can pop up user notifications from your browser to the user. Cappuccino 0.9.9 will be available later today. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I did have kind of a question about the CP localized string thing. Does it work with the equivalent would be probably CP string with localized string?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to work. Yeah, so.
He's happy.
The fun thing with the way we did localization is that you can really sort of port it directly from your Mac apps. So if you have a Mac app, it became just a little bit easier to take that Mac app and make it a web app, which I think is just amazing. I wrote a blog post about it a couple of years ago about just taking a regular Mac app and making it into a web app, and it was easy, and that's exactly the way I like it. It's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to overstate the Mac connection for Cappuccino. One thing you guys should think about is that Cappuccino is not a Mac technology. It's based on a Mac technology, but it's a web technology. You can use it whether you're a Mac or a PC user. But if you do happen to be a Mac user, you do get some side benefits. So you can take all your existing Mac apps, and in some cases, at least a part of your iOS apps, and you can bring them online.
Do you have any idea how Apple does Pages and Keynote on the web? Does it use Cappuccino for this?
No, it does not. It uses Sprout Core, yeah.
But it looks quite nice.
It does look nice.
I think they are ahead of us a little bit.
And possibly, I think that, I mean, obviously, when I was talking about the lack of foundations, I was focused more on Google and those guys because, to be fair, the Apple online apps are pretty good for being online apps. Sprout Core takes a different approach than Cappuccino does. It's less of an encompassing solution than we are. Cappuccino really gives you not just the foundation in terms of Objective-J, an actual language with full classes and categories and so on, but it layers and layers on top of that. While Sprout Core is a more focused solution where you still have to do more things on your own. Other questions? Someone has a question.
Touch support. What is touch support like in Cappuccino?
Touch support it's working, but in my testing so far, it's never worked super well. There have been some issues with scrolling. Honestly, it's probably something that can be very easily fixed. I've seen some apps run on the mobile just fine, but until and when someone actually tries to do it and do it on a large scale, well, it's like any open source project. The squeaky wheels get the attention. Yes, please.
When will you merge in the text object?
We are not going to merge it in for 0.9.9. We will wait one more iteration, so it'll probably be coming up in 0.9.10 or even 1.0. We haven't decided yet what we're actually going to call the next release. Oh, yeah, of course. You were the one who wrote it. Yeah. Yes, so that's the plan currently. It's a very, very big pull request, so it's going to take us a while to mull it over and get through it. Yeah. It's definitely one of the things that we've been talking about, in fact, from the beginning. You know, all the things that we really want to have in the 1.0. You know, what are sort of the minimal product that we'd really like to call a 1.0. And of course, a text field, text view is a very important part of that.
Quite a while ago, when actually there was some talk on the forum, the main list about essentially sponsored feature requests. Is that something that's completely abandoned? Is that something that would be introducible, or how would it work?
Well, that might be a question that's more appropriate for the panel. I shouldn't be speaking for everyone, because I'm not everyone. But you know, I've seen it work. You know, the projects definitely. See, Fabricator comes to mind. Very famous for doing that. They basically say, you know what, if you send in a support request and you send us some money with it, I mean, resources are limited. We live in the real world, and sometimes when someone sponsors something, it will happen faster. That's just the reality of it. Yeah. So personally, I'm not opposed to it, but I would have to defer to the panel later today for a more full discussion on that.
You may have to add that to the question itself, the panel?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you very much.